Ready. Play.
First of all, I plan to do this outside, but as you can see, hail, thunder, and all merry are occurring there, so I have taken refuge here, and hopefully we can still recreate some of the similar vibes that would have occurred outside, although maybe you would have enjoyed me getting soaking wet like a British Prime Minister. Anyway, you're not here to hear about the weather. You are here for the ATP Power Rankings. Probably the most difficult one I've had to forge, to be honest with you. I think every single position is debatable. I think on many previous ones, and also the women's one, for example, I think there's a lot of locks and seals, if you like, and certainly only one or two areas of debate. The men's one, though, is all over the show. I expect to hear lots of people have differing opinions, and I want you to get them in the comment section below, as well as hitting that like button and, of course, subscribing to the channel if you are new. A couple of omissions, one or two, or maybe both, will surprise you. Rafa Nadal doesn't make it into my top 10. We just don't have enough to go on in the last 2 years, basically, since winning the title in 2022. Of course, we remember him getting to the quarters at Wimbledon beyond that, and then having a pretty much limp second half of that 2022 season before barely playing since the beginning of 2023. We've seen him a little bit recently, but you might say, listen, John, 14 French Opens, 22 Grand Slams, of course, overall. Isn't that enough to go on? Well, we can also go on perhaps what we've seen in the last 4 weeks as well, and what we've seen in the last 4 weeks also wouldn't get you close to a top 10 power rankings. We do take reputation into account, but 10 players, are we really that confident that he's going to make the second week? Honestly, I'm not, especially if the draw is, well, it's going to come out in very shortly. This is actually being recorded before the draw, which I think is really important to remember. Another omission, by the way, is Daniil Medvedev. Maybe even more contentious. You know, he's number 5 in the world right now. He won Rome last year. He won Rome last year, but he's not won a title since. And I see Rome at the end of his career as being the outlier on this particular surface. What are their results on clay? What are their, what's their form like on clay? What's their form like in 2024 as a whole? What's their pedigree at the French Open? Asterisk Rafa Nadal. Comment section below. Etc., etc., etc. Anyway, let's get to it, shall we? Number 10 on my list is Hubie Hurkacz. He's slightly higher ranked in the world right now, number 8, but of course his clay pedigree is not quite there compared to some of his peers. Form isn't bad, did okay in Rome, won of course in Estoril, both on the clay surface. And that serve is going to basically get him out of trouble a lot of the time. And given his ranking, top 8 in the world, he should have an okay run for the first couple of rounds. Of course, it depends on who he gets, which qualifiers, etc. for. We don't know that right now, but the power rankings needs to be draw independent. By the way, talking of power rankings, make sure you check out Nick's WTA power rankings, which was released earlier on today. Number 9, Nicolas Jarry. Jarry is a guy with a lot of clay court pedigree, although he is extremely up and down. Of course, mostly up, given his height, but also he is pretty decent on this surface, as his Rome final suggests, so there is some form as well for the Chilean. So he's number 9 on my list. Number 8, Holger Rune. Now this may be the most surprising one, because this guy's form is just not there. Since making the final in Brisbane back in January, there hasn't been any indications that Holger Rune is going to be making a deep run at a Grand Slam anytime soon. But he does have pedigree on this surface. He is, if he performs, an easily top 8 power ranking individual for me. And so therefore, he does get to number 8 on the list. Of course, he made the Monte Carlo final last year. He made the Rome final last year. He's been deep in Paris on a couple of occasions as well, which is pretty remarkable given his age. It's just his current form that is preventing him from being even higher, in my opinion, on this list. But it's there. Just needs to be untapped. Number 7 on my list, Andrei Rublev. Andrei Rublev comes into this tournament also with some pretty good form, winning in Madrid, recently on the clay. He's actually got the clay court pedigree. He's been to the French Open final, French Open quarterfinal a couple of times before. I think he's a lock for this power rankings. It's just where you place him. Some people may have him even 1 or 2 places higher, but I have him at number 7 on my list. Number 6, Stefanos Tsitsipas, a former French Open finalist, of course, in 2021, being 2 sets to love up on Novak Djokovic in that particular final. He comes in at number 6. Form not bad as well. Some pretty good runs at most of the clay court tournaments. Final in Barcelona. Winning, of course, in Monte Carlo. He has the pedigree. Can he go even further, perhaps, than my 6 on my power ranking suggests, which is quarterfinal-ish? Casper Ruud comes in at number 5. Him and Tsitsipas, by the way, could easily be flipped. Of course, Stefanos beating Casper Ruud in the final in Monte Carlo, but then Casper Ruud reversing that result a week later in Barcelona. So Casper Ruud, by the way, also a French Open finalist. In fact, a French Open finalist on 2 occasions, losing to Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal. No great shame in that, of course, although it was a bit of a beatdown against Rafa in particular, where I think he won just 6 games across those 3 sets, but should be going deep. I mean, he's basically someone who will not be losing to a random player. Shouldn't be anyway. And so I see him really, whatever the draw is, getting to 4th round quarterfinal, and therefore number 5 on my list is entirely justified. Number 4 on my list, Alexander Zverev. Yet to make a French Open final, of course, got to the French Open semi-finals 2 years ago, also 3 years ago as well, so he's got pedigree in Paris. Do you like that? Pedigree in Paris. If that's not worth a like, I don't know what is. And of course, he won Rome recently. So, big German guy. We often think of other surfaces, perhaps, with these types of players, but no, he is very good on the clay, as are actually, to be honest with you, which is under the radar slightly, a lot of German players, and of course, a lot of courts in Germany. A lot of players will grow up on that surface. So he's at number 4 on the list. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. The 3, maybe the trickiest thing. I guess we've all got to have them in the 3. We just don't know where for a million different reasons. In the case of the number 3, it's because of fitness and a hip in particular. Jannik Sinner could easily be number 1 if it wasn't for the hip injury, which is really difficult to gauge. But you know what I decided to do at the end? I decided to just sort of put the injuries aside and still try and assess them on the hard criteria, or maybe it should be soft criteria given its clay and the pedigree at the French Open. And therefore he comes in at number 3. If we just look at that, of course if we throw in form, then it gets much tighter. And I'm going to look at those 3 factors and still place him at number 3. Incredible form all the way up until that semi-final in Monte Carlo, where he started to feel it physically. Of course, then we saw him retire or withdraw in Madrid due to the hip injury, and there was a lot of doubts as to whether he will play in Paris, and still, of course, may yet withdraw from the French Open draw. But he is in Paris, he is practicing. Now, John, you might be asking, why isn't he therefore 1 or 2 on the list? You're including form. Yes, I am. Unbelievable form this year. Winning in Miami, winning the Australian Open, winning Rotterdam, knocking on the door for the world number 1 spot. Well, I still think that the French Open, it's never been that far before. It's never been to the semi-finals or the final before. Clay is, at the moment at least, would seem to be the worst surface. It's going to be fine. And if it, he could be number 1, but he's number 3. Number 2 on my list, Carlos Alcaraz. I think now you can guess who's number 1. Carlos Alcaraz, last year's semi-finalist, of course, quarter-finalist the year before. So he's increasing, he's improving year on year. Again, there are fitness doubts regarding that arm. I saw him practicing yesterday with the sleeve. Nevertheless, he's number 2 on my list. Could easily be number 1, could easily be number 3, could easily even withdraw from the tournament in the coming hours or days. Therefore, you can probably guess who my number 1 is. Again, a guy without any real form, Novak Djokovic, although he did beat Jannik yesterday in Geneva. And who knows, if he goes on to win that title, it might augment my suggestion of putting him at number 1 in the power rankings. But 24 Grand Slams, 3 French Opens, including 2 in the last 3 years. If that isn't pedigree, I don't know what is. He's extremely good on the clay. He's extremely good in Grand Slams. The only reason he wouldn't be at number one on anyone's list is the form, which I think is 13-5 for the year. And I guess it is a bit patchy. But if anyone can bring it, Novak can bring it. And over 5 sets, do you really think he's vulnerable in that first week? I don't. Do you really think he's going to get better after the first few matches in the tournament? I do. Can he win the tournament? Absolutely. Will he win the tournament? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed this Power Rankings video. Do hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new.